Hi, everybody. Welcome to Freight Marketing Gurus. I am Demand Gen, aka Jenny Malafrina, CEO of Virago Marketing, as well as co-founder of Freight Movement. And today we've got Lars Ward here with us. Hi, Lars.
Hey. Thanks for having me on, Jen.
Yes, absolutely. So before we dive into who you are, I like to start with an icebreaker. And I believe you chose, if you could invite any three people, living or dead, to a dinner party, who would they be and why?
All right, so I'm the jerk because, Jen, you've got a list of different icebreakers, and I called an audible when we were hanging out before the show. So, and you said dinner party, right?
Yes.
Okay, because we were joking, and I've also said I love this question for your dream golf foursome when you're out golfing with somebody you don't know. It's a fun way to get to know people. When it comes to a dinner party where I'd have a lot of fun hanging out. A little bit about my personality. Okay, so I love the NBA. I'm gonna pick Steph Curry. He just seems like such a cool guy. I think it'd be fun to hang out with him. Let's see. All right, we've got to pick someone in entertainment who'd be really, really fun to hang out with. You know, I think Ryan Reynolds would be really fun.
Yeah.
There's so much like from, just entertainment, but also on the marketing side. He's a marketing genius. And I feel like he's like genuinely a fun person to hang out with.
I think he has multiple companies that people don't realize he does.
Right. I've also heard he's kind of a jerk in real life. I don't know. Here's the great part. I'm never going to meet him, so I can say that. And I'm going to come up later on.
Don't worry, I won't tag him.
Yeah, right. I hope this comes back to bite me. I really hope this comes back to bite me.
Hashtag Ryan Reynolds.
Yeah.
Hopefully not a jerk. Hopefully not.
All right, so we've got one of the greatest athletes of all time. We've got super cool, maybe not, marketer and entertainment movie star. All right, let's see. Let's pick somebody from the business world who I think would be fun to hang out with. A lot of people come to mind. Gosh, let's see. I don't remember the person's name offhand, but again, I think it fits into this marketing sort of conversation. I forget who the founder of HubSpot was, but I remember reading that person's blog. You know who I'm talking about?
Well, there's Dharmesh, and Dharmesh is really cool.
I think I'm thinking of Dharmesh, yeah, because
the other guy, I want to say Steve, but that is like such a like now I need to know.
Yeah, I can't have my own dinner party. That's going to be super fun and cool if I don't know their names. But and I think you look at so many people in the business.
Brian Halligan.
Yeah, okay.
And then
I don't know why I thought it was Dharmesh, but maybe there's some other content. I mean, like HubSpot is like some of the content they put out is just fantastic, right? And
their model, like they built this community around a solution, and like you can have these partnerships, but like everybody goes to their inbound event to like what's the latest and greatest in the solution and building the community. And I think the community is the biggest thing that has driven the innovation that HubSpot has.
There's so many, I think public facing leaders, but you look at like maybe the Fortune 100 companies, right? And I think we know a lot of them. We can learn a lot from their books or from podcasts. And, there's different people I really like, but I think learning from the folks who had built HubSpot, that would be so much fun.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think, it was really interesting when I attended Inbound and I'm walking around, I was passing Brian and Dharmesh in the hallways. Like they were just other people at the show. So cool. I feel like they're more approachable and like less behind the scenes. And like, have you ever been to Inbound?
I haven't. I've consumed a lot of the content. I've seen it, right? Because it's one of the best conferences.
Yeah.
What was it like for you?
I loved it. So I think I started going in like 2016 or even 2015. I think it was 2015. And I loved the whole platform. Like they had their users get up and talk about use cases and how they were leveraging HubSpot and found success. And like, even though sometimes it wasn't a direct application, like idea generation was like huge. And just hearing their success stories and stuff like that. But I also loved all the keynotes, and like Brian and Dharmesh would get on stage and talk about their lives and like how they built HubSpot and like how they interact in the office. And I thought that was really cool because it gave some culture and transparency to HubSpot. Now, I will say that was pre-COVID. When COVID hit and they went online, I was not a fan, and I thought it changed drastically and seemed more about the large name sponsorships and the content, and it was hard to attend and pay attention, but there were huge technology issues. And then when Inbound came back post-COVID, I think they lost that continuity in what that show looked like and felt like. And I wasn't like a huge fan. And so I'm kind of teetering with going back. I've heard kind of mixed emotions on, their experience in attending. I used to love they did a comedy show. It was like the greatest. It was just like a super great show. Like marketing people are awesome. And so like imagine 30,000 marketing people in one building.
Oh, that was such a fun hang. Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, walk away and learn from that, right?
Yeah.
It's so fun.
Yeah, you get so many ideas, you get so much education. I really loved the show, and I think I've got to go back. I think this past year they embraced more of the experience that they had pre-COVID, because when COVID happened, they lost all the speakers, talking about the use cases and stuff like that, and they used to have like tracks, and I missed that because there were so many opportunities to go see various aspects of HubSpot or marketing. Like you could be like CMO, or you could be IT, or you could be visual, or you could be content. Like you could kind of pick your track, and there was tons of content and classes to attend. But last year, not this year, but 2023, I went, and we couldn't even get into classes. Like they didn't have a lot of classes, and then they, because of COVID and restrictions and stuff, they were only allowing so many people in so that they could sit so far apart, and it was a bad experience. And maybe that was 22 because we didn't know.
Maybe it's changed a little bit since then. Yeah, there's an interesting conversation in general about how conferences have changed before and after COVID, right? And I think a lot of us really desire that in-person experience, and it's been highlighted as something that's more important, right? Mm-hmm. Where maybe some of the work travel that was happening before was a little bit fluffy, didn't need to happen. So now it's like, all right, for some of the best conferences out there, you really do want to show up and be engaged, because it creates this great environment for networking and for learning. But if it's just about the big sponsors and it's just about showing up, but you're really not getting to meet new people or new ideas, kind of the heart of what conferences have been for a long time, if they're a little bit too sterilized, right?
Yeah.
They're probably going to lose their shine or their value. And you hear that from, other large in-person events. For some reason, when you mentioned the comedy show and sort of the personality that Inbound had for a long time, I thought about South by Southwest, where for the longest time it was known as like the destination to go to for all kinds of ideas. And now it just seems like a larger corporate sterile sort of, or sterilized, festival. Yeah. Maybe not, I don't know. But it's an interesting problem that some of these large events have to, deal with. How do you keep what makes this event special as you grow and scale it?
Yeah. And kind of dealing with the disruptions, right? Like there was a time when I was at Inbound and they announced I don't want to get into politics. We're not going to dive deep in here, but I was at Inbound and they announced that Trump was the president, and the comedian refused to come. Oh, wow. They were so distraught they were not doing the show. I would further say that I don't really think like the politics belong at the shows. So HubSpot is very, very political heavy, which that's maybe my biggest turnoff about HubSpot is kind of the politics and the positioning and stuff like that, where it's like, I'm really here for the marketing. I don't want my political feelings or your political feelings to be expressed here. That's neither here nor there.
but I think that's something where there's a lot of common ground for a lot of folks, right? you said it very well. You're coming for a marketing event, and when it gets a little bit blurry or gray with like different things, that can be disappointing and frustrating. And I think the spirit of events like that shouldn't be to alienate anyone, right? And so by
Sure.
keeping it as close to the focus as possible, you know, is an important thing to do. So
Yeah, for sure. So I mean, we're already like 10 minutes in and we didn't introduce you
I
yet.
know, right?
So let's take a step back here and just tell us, who you are, what you do, where you work, give us some background.
Awesome. Well, my name is Lars. I'm the VP of Sales and Strategic Partnerships at Cheema. I've been at Cheema for almost a year now and have responsibility for our sales team, our customer service team, and support a lot of the industry partnerships that we have that underpin all the technology for us to get the job done. So it's really exciting. For a little bit more on Cheema, we are a mid-sized trucking company. We've got 500 assets operating primarily in the West, and then a brokerage that serves the rest of the country. Before joining Cheema, I had been in the transportation industry for about 12 years. I spent most of my time at Knight Swift, was there for about 10 years. And then for almost 3 years, I was a part of a startup freight brokerage called Freightvana. So during my time in the industry, the thing that I've always been passionate about and excited about is working with customers to find new solutions, to go and win business, just work together to build up everything that we do. So I'm excited about it. And it kind of touches everything sales and marketing and customer service.
Yeah. And that's why I wanted to talk to you, because we kind of, talked about this on previous conversations, is like eliminating the complexity in sales. It doesn't have to be that difficult. So that's kind of what I wanted to dive into today. So you said the sales process doesn't need to be complex. What's been your approach to making things simpler, and how has that benefited your team?
Yep. Okay. So this is something I'm very passionate about, but without the right framing, I think it could be misunderstood.
Okay.
There is sort of a U curve in sales for how they go about building out a sales process, right? So we've got cowboys in our industry who have no systems, no processes, and it's all effort and energy and excitement to go and win opportunities. And that can work to some points, right? I'm not advocating for sort of a just go for it mentality with no strategy behind it. Okay, that's bad. There's also these like overly complex, well, this is my territory and this person has had it for this long. And sometimes that's okay. But here's our sequence and we don't deviate from it for any reason. If they want to work with us, they being a shipper, there's only so many ways that you can choose to work with us. We start to put rules and boxes around exactly how we go about the process. And we hear this line often that sales is somewhat of an art and a science. And blending those two things together is where you can make a meaningful difference in the business and sort of bend that win probability towards your favor, right? And so I think with the right framework and the right strategy, it's really not a complex process. It doesn't have to be an overly designed sort of experience. I think you just get down to a very straightforward, here's how we prospect. Here's how we find the types of customers that we'd like to work with. They are in segments that we have a specific value prop, where we're clear and where we're intentional. They probably look like the other customers who we serve today. And as we seek to grow, we identify those adjacent areas that make a ton of sense for us. Our marketing design and collateral all align to these value prop messaging. We know who we are, we know what we do, and we do that very, very well. Then from a sales process, you sort of, build out your prospecting list. You know who you're reaching out to. You know why you're reaching out to them. You have clear, concise messaging. You have a sequence that makes sense. That sequence does not look like calling a customer on a Friday night or texting them on a Sunday morning. Things I've heard of. Reaching out to their spouse. Oh my gosh, like so crazy.
What?
Oh, hold on. Totally true. Totally true. Especially at conferences. We were just talking about conferences. There are folks in our industry who reach out to the spouses of the people they'd like to talk to, which, bold move. And maybe you think you have nothing to lose. They're not talking to you anyway. Guess what? Not only is that a bad idea, I, as a shipper, would go and like brag and tell everybody how bad you are. And they don't work with you either, right? But those things kind of happen, right? So when it comes to the outreach, how to reach out in I would say, a respectful, smart way where the value messaging is concise. You are trying to follow up because you want your buyers to be in that buying window. They don't want to make a change every day. If they did want to make changes in their business every day, you'd probably be aligning with a partner who's not the best to align with long term, right? And that's okay if that's the category that they exist with. But you understand the business, you understand these segments that you're reaching out to. You have a good follow-up sort of practice where you're using the phone, you're using email, you're using social channels, you're following up with things that show value, show an expertise, and give them a great reason to say, hey, if I'm going to explore change, you're one of the folks I would explore that with.
Yeah, and I think
yeah,
is in the value, right? Like in the message that you're saying, but then the science is in the sequence. So when you say sequence, do you have a methodical approach to your sequences? Is it X amount of touches in X channels? What does that look like for you guys?
Yeah, there have been times where I've been really, really disciplined around that, where I would tell you in the first 30 days, here's how many touches that happen on which day with which channel, right? And now I would say I use that more as like a skeleton framework to say, well, there's some flexibility within that. Go with what's a little bit more natural, but have the number of touches in maybe a little bit more of a flexible schedule. Both things have worked for me. I think the important clarification here is this: when you reach out and you're starting a cold process. Oh, hold on.
Yeah, I was going to say you disappeared.
Uh-oh. I don't know why I disappeared. So my camera was disconnected.
We lost Lars. Sequences, is that like X amount of touches, X channels? What does that look like for you guys?
Yeah, a lot of people talk about sequences very differently. So you can get really, really detailed, and we had some technical difficulties before this question. So my first answer was even better.
It was great. Let's go.
It was great. Yeah, guys, you missed out. I laid it out perfectly. There's a secret sequence you can use.
I'm just going to leave it in there so everybody can laugh at us, because I feel like it gives authenticity to this whole experience.
I know,
and like,
right?
Whatever it is, that's who we are.
If you're listening along and you're hanging out with us, it's probably because you're enjoying this conversation and it's real, right? So
and you have nothing else to do.
Let's make it really easy to edit and keep the technical difficulties in. Sequences though, like, all right, here's the big frameworks I would say. The first framework is people who think they have a sequence and they actually don't. And it's all about this effort and energy and reaching out. And these are people who manage through chaos, and they just reach out when they think about it. They reach out in an unpredictable, unstructured, unscheduled way. And sometimes, quite frankly, it works. So then they get the false signal that works, and they continue to do it that way, right? The other extreme of that would be someone who only reaches out when the sequence tells them to reach out, and there's not a lot of flexibility or creativity within that. And I think what the best approach would be for what I'm selling, which is transportation services to small and large shippers, is to be thoughtful throughout the process and have a certain number of touches over a certain amount of time to win. So let's reverse engineer it just like another step, right? What's the sales cycle in selling full truckload services, right? And it's a fun question because you won't get the same answer from anybody. So I like to give this answer because it shows the actual nature of selling this. The sales cycle is 1 to 12 months and sometimes longer.
That's like a huge variability.
Right, of course, right? But if I'm working on a customer that I might be able to do a significant amount of business with, they might not make changes on a short near-term basis. Mm-hmm. And they might want to align those changes to a long-term basis. And some of those customers are worth talking to for 2 years. And that's okay. So if that's true, what does your sequence look like? Because if you're like, I'm gonna call them 5 times in 30 days, you're probably going to lose. But what I do think is important is early on, you present a lot of value through a couple of channels, phone calls, emails, social, to tell them why you might be a good fit to work with them. And if you don't get any traction, then over a longer period of time, it's, sometimes I even ask for permission. I said, hey, would it be okay if I call you, or email you every other month? We stay in touch. If your business is anything like mine, it's dynamic and things change regularly. So let's stay in touch, because when you're ready to make a change, it's probably going to be about who's been talking to you most recently. I just want to be on that short list of partners that you're excited to bring into your business. Doesn't need to be tomorrow, right? Okay. So if you're thoughtful and you're respectful about it, most folks will say, sure. And here's what I would also tell you, especially on email, most folks are going to read the emails you send, even if they don't reply. I had a meeting earlier this week. I think it was a response to the 6th email, but we had sent maybe like 8 or 9, and the 6th email was back in June. They must have searched by some keyword that was in that specific email to solve a specific problem they have, right? So cool. I'm glad that we didn't give up after the 5th email.
So what do you think when there's like the 12 touches in 22 days? Like that's just one method, right? And it's like call and leave a voicemail, send an email, call, send an email, connect on LinkedIn. Like, is that too systematic? And then I think if you're doing something like that, because they say you got to have X amount of touches before you can break through the noise, right? So there's that mentality that you got to make so many touches, but then like salespeople can only handle so many opportunities. So it's like, how do you cycle them through? Even if you have
an infinite level where you could only accomplish that at some point through automation. And I don't know about you, but the more automated the message, the less likely I am to reply.
Yeah.
And then everyone's going to say, yeah, but it's a numbers game. Send 1 million emails a day and you'll definitely have 10 qualified meetings. Right? Okay. Maybe, right?
Sure.
And so the problem is, because when we use these big numbers, I think the problem is ask somebody, it's like, cool, where does that break down? You're right. Sending 100 emails a day is awesome. Why don't you do 1 million then?
Right. Yeah.
And then I look at you like funny, right?
Well, I mean, it's not like a repeatable, scalable process like that, right? Like I often hear this from the marketing side is like, well, if we can get 10 leads for $200, if I get, or 10 leads for $2,000, 200 each, then if I give you another 10,000, you're going to get me another 10 leads. I'm like, no, it's marketing math. Like, sorry, it doesn't work that way. Like, I mean, there's just so many variabilities and then 88% of people are not in the buyer's journey. So it's like you said, like, it's like making these touches and following up every so often. Staying top of mind is necessary so that when they are looking, when they are in market, they're like, oh, you know what? Cheema's on my short list of, partners for us to consider. He's been, reaching out to us over the last year or so. I'm going to reach out to him. I think what's important is to build a relationship so that like, oh, you know what? Lars, right? Like, I'm going to reach back out to Lars. This might not necessarily be, the brand, but it might be Lars. Like I've been having conversations with Lars.
So there's something interesting there, right? Because you have both the value of the brand in which you are selling, and then you have your own personal brand. Won't name names, but there's some company that is soliciting me and Cheema right now that has a pretty good solve for a problem that we have. The person who's reaching out to, we don't want to talk to. And yet our experience terrible, right? Okay. Say that they made it terrible, but they don't. They haven't on a personal level connected with us in a way that makes us want to engage. We are strictly interested in their product, not the person who represents that product. Isn't that a funny sort of balance?
You're interested in the product, but not the person who represents that product. So whoever's marketing to you or trying to sell to you is like hitting a nerve of some kind, even though they sell a quality solution.
That's right. Yep. And so it's funny because sometimes we attribute incorrectly sales and marketing success to the individuals behind it and not so much to the product. The product and the individuals have to work hand in hand, right?
100%. If you have a crappy product, you're not going to sell anything. Or if you do sell something, you're going to have a hole in your bucket because they're not going to stay with you. So if the product's not... If the product's not good, there's not going to be ROI.
So folks could come to you and say, hey, like we've got the best product in the world if only people knew about it. And you might, look under the hood and say, oh, that's not what I'm hearing from your customers or from the marketplace. Your product sucks. If I tell everybody about it, that could be a problem too.
Right. It's definitely going to cause some holes in the bucket. So how do you ensure that your marketing and sales team stay aligned? What's been key to keeping those teams working smoothly together?
Yeah. So this sort of goes back to, answering a little bit of that from a sequencing standpoint, because when you understand the prospects and the kinds of shippers you should be working with, and then you understand the value messaging that you would solicit them with, right? That solicitation is sort of where the marketing and sales will meet, because you're going and presenting, I can solve these problems in this way, and that would be valuable to you. So from a marketing perspective, you have to have a deep product knowledge about what you offer and why it is valuable to the marketplace. My mousetrap is better, and this is why. You should be able to really nail your elevator pitch, and maybe to different people, right? Because those pitches are going to sound different, hopefully.
Yeah.
But the alignment to what your product is, what you can offer, has to be 100% there. The second piece is, from a marketing standpoint, you have to have a deep knowledge of who you are selling to and how they prefer to buy, right? So if you have the best message, if you have phenomenal messaging around what you do, but it's not put into a contextualized, relevant way for those buyers, it doesn't really matter. So for example, I'm probably not going to go and buy a bunch of Instagram ads to sell full truckload. But if I was selling a B2C brand, sure, of course you look at that social channel. Maybe you do want to go on LinkedIn, right? And so obviously that's an easy example that we all understand, but where are you putting this messaging and why are you putting it there?
Right.
Can you get back some of these marketing leads to those channels, and then where do you choose to invest those dollars, right? And not even investing those dollars, I would just say, what does your marketing collateral look like? What's your LinkedIn look like? What's your website look like? All of those things have to be aligned.
Right. Yeah. I mean, you need to have consistent messaging and a nice buyer's journey through it all to kind of move them through the thought process and answer their questions. I know from a marketing perspective, for me, supporting sales means, hey, tell me what questions they have and what objections they give you, or, what they're looking for, what problems they're trying to solve, so that we can create content that enables them to do research on our website before it becomes an issue later, so that they already know kind of the value prop of the solution, and can set.
Let's pick on brokers for a minute, right? Okay. Because I love brokers. I've brokered a lot of freight. I continue to broker a lot of freight. But when someone reaches out and they say, we can do this for you, which is typically, I will save you money and improve your service, and I haven't talked to you yet. Weird, right? But then when a shipper says, or someone says, we don't need another broker, I'm different. Okay, how? And then it's a lot of buzzwords and sales that typically just says, well, because I will effort better. Maybe that is your value proposition. Maybe you truly are selling yourself and your team. Okay, that's fine. But the point is getting to that objection level. How much clarity do you have around the objections, and how do you answer those?
Yeah. Well, then I think, knowing their business and understanding where you can help them actually be true partners and provide value, whether it's technology, reporting, anything like that can just kind of set you apart and provide more value, above and beyond of your core solution, I think is going to help you, build stronger relationships that last longer.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. So think of it like this, right? When you're not thoughtful about how you're soliciting or selling to a buyer, you're also signaling and showing them what it might be like to work with you. Mm-hmm. So even if they haven't responded to your phone calls or your voicemails or to your emails, they're looking at the way in which you message. They're looking at the sort of clarity that you bring to your solution. They're looking at maybe your industry expertise, right? They're seeing all these signals before they've even engaged with you that does represent the brand itself. So maybe they consume 10 different messages from you on a couple of different channels before you talk. Well, all of that has told them something. And maybe it's only through that process that you prove you're worth talking to. Well, that's fine too, right? If you can only imagine, especially for transportation services, the number of solicitations that most folks get, I don't blame them for not responding to all of them. I wouldn't. So why would that upset me in any way, right?
Right.
You like,
Yeah.
it's not the right time or it's not the right message. Keep working on the timing. Follow up in a smart, respectful way, and get a better message, or find people who your message would resonate with. That's on you too.
So, question about prospecting. What do you think? Like, should there be like a research element to it? Like, because we're talking about eliminating complexity, but you should know who you're talking to. You should write a organic, personal, or personalized kind of message to that person about who they are and what their challenges are and things like that. So what does the research component on a sales side, what should that look like? Or what does yours look like? Or what would you recommend that looks like? Yeah. And how do you guys leverage technology for that?
So there's a lot of pieces of this that could be automated, right? It could be automated in the way in which you find your prospects based on different business intelligence tools that are going to look for customers that fit certain criteria. Okay, that's a great way to start some of the prospecting efforts. But with technology, I mean, think about going to the company's website, reading their financial statements if they're publicly traded, going to the individuals that you're selling to and looking at their social media presence, especially LinkedIn, and then designing a message that would be relevant to them. A lot of it, is either going to be automated or automated through copy paste into some emails or presenting it, right? Because the way I should sell to a big box retailer should be different than how I sell to a automotive manufacturer.
Yep.
The things they care about are very different, right? But I should know, so I should segment out my prospects. Maybe that's 20 some odd categories. And then I should know within each of those, there are specific value props and there are specific objections and why I might be a good fit for them.
Right.
You get clarity on that messaging, you reach out with that messaging. And then, you mentioned personalization. Yeah, like, look, for some of these customers, you don't want to just send a automated drip email campaign where you copied their email and it's just first name, last name, and you let it run hoping that they reach out. For some of them, if they're really a well-qualified prospect, if you know that you have a great solution for them, be personal, be thoughtful, sell differently in the fourth quarter than you would in the first quarter. The last thing the personalization should look like is, hey, P.S., I saw you went to ASU, go Sun Devils. Like that stuff is so lame.
That's the old school.
Because people
in your
I got that email this month. Like, I'm sure I could, right? Now, hey, if you are an alumni and there's something fun, or you can tell like that they're a super,
like if you have that in common, right? If there's something meaningful there.
But if this is like personalization at scale and it's really just trash, like, hey, I noticed you live in Phoenix. I heard it's hot. Yep. Thanks.
Yep.
We're laughing because it's true.
Oh, yeah.
So I think it's like kind of getting out of some of the, like having more structure than the chaos of effort and energy and hoping that yields the results, but also not trying to over design every message such that you've taken out the part of sales that I think we love, which is building a meaningful connection, truly understanding their business, rolling up your sleeves, and figuring out how to connect the dots differently, right? They've got all of their business needs and expectations and characteristics, and I've got a product that can serve them. And it's up to me. I'm really, really good at sales. I know how to take the best of what I can offer, the most of what they need, and put that together better than someone else. Like, that's the fun part.
So what challenges have you faced in aligning sales and marketing, and how did you work through those?
I've been fortunate in a lot of respects. So I spent most of my time at Knight Swift. And from a marketing perspective at Knight Swift, having one of the largest truckload fleets on the road really helped, because people would typically say something like, I've seen you guys around. Not everyone has that benefit. Right. So when I went to a startup and there was no customers, no revenue, no partner carriers, no systems, no technology to underpin everything that we
No
were
big
offering.
brand.
Yeah, right. It was a very interesting sort of proposition to go and put a brand into the marketplace. And what I think we were fortunate in is there was no sort of legacy debt in having done that poorly.
Sure.
So we were able to align sales and marketing by the virtue of both things were new and would really just present what I could offer in a very transparent way. I don't do this today, but I've done it in the past, and here's why I think we would do a good job with that, right? And if you do that enough with the right level of transparency and integrity, those messages will resonate. And was benefited from some relationships in the industry, having worked in this business for a long, long time. Now at Cheema, I think it's another fun and interesting problem. You know, there's not negative legacy debt, but really Cheema has grown a lot over the last couple of years. So we have a really good reputation, but it's not widely known. There's not a whole lot of 500 truck fleets in the country. You've got a lot of fleets under 100 trucks. You've got a lot of fleets over 1,000. You don't have many that are in the middle. And then on top of that, we've got a brokerage that is really high service, built alongside some of the customers that we work with on the asset side, built with some customers that we don't serve on the asset side because we're not the right fit for them. But they've built a really strong reputation. So now it's more about like, how do we put that message out there? And even before I joined Cheema, if you were to go look at the marketing we do, especially to drivers, we've always had a really, really strong marketing presence and punching above our weight in getting our message out there. I think we take a lot of pride in not trying to sell over our skis and say that we can do everything.
Sure.
We have a lot of discipline on who we are and what we do well. So in that sense, there's a certain level of purity. I think where a lot of transportation, companies get into danger is they sell something that isn't really there from a product side.
Sure.
And it goes back to the conversation we were talking about before. If you don't figure the product out, it doesn't matter how you position it.
And maybe don't try to be everything that you're not, because it's just going to cause problems down the road. So if you have a solution that has not been built out to actually do that function, don't sell it.
Yeah. Okay.
So,
I love examples. I'm such a classic. Yeah, right. So if somebody's favorite restaurant is Cheesecake Factory, I'm sorry, but that menu is obscene. Like, and here's the thing: it works for them, but you're not the Cheesecake Factory, right?
Right.
You're at a menu that you can crush it, and it should probably be on one page. And everything, when you go to a restaurant and you ask, "Hey, what's good on your menu?" and the person you're talking to says everything, and it actually really is good. It's like, okay, that's probably your favorite restaurant. It's probably the kind of place you want to go to. If you say that you're the Cheesecake Factory and someone, and you're having that conversation, it's like, what are you good at? Well, I'm actually only good at these 2 things, but I offer 50 things. You're not the Cheesecake Factory. Stop it.
You're not the Cheesecake Factory. Oh my gosh. That's so funny. So you had mentioned integrity and transparency, and I really feel like that has to do with your personal brand. So I want to jump over and talk about you a little bit. So you've built a strong presence on LinkedIn. How's that helped you with your sales strategy, and what advice do you have for building like your personal brand online?
Yeah. So sometimes I'm pretty dismissive about LinkedIn, where it's easy to get caught up in some of the vanity metrics and think that you're a social media influencer. I'm not. Here's how I think about LinkedIn, right? I really enjoy sharing the things that I'm working on. And in the process of doing that, I'm creating a digital footprint that sells for me when I'm not selling in front of a customer. And that footprint is exactly who I am. Sometimes I'll share a little bit about family, before we start recording. Yeah, like I was in Disneyland a couple of weeks ago. So I shared a picture of it.
There was like a humanity piece to that, where I stepped away from work. I'm in Disney with my family. Like there's more aspects to me than what you just see from a working perspective. Like I'm a person.
Totally. But it's funny because I could lean really heavily into that. I've seen some people on LinkedIn who do, and it's, sort of it's a social media, asset that's only talking about your family. okay, well, for what I do and for what I sell, like that would be maybe a little bit weird. But I love talking about my family. You know,
Yeah.
I'm very bullish on those first 5 to 10 minutes in a meeting where you're talking about where somebody lives and what their hobbies are and about their families because I actually care, you know, and I enjoy that. I like talking about it too, right? Um,
I always start
so
if you
so
get
part of that again, it goes back.
sorry, I was just gonna say if you get on a phone call with me, we're gonna start with the weather because the weather influences my mood. So I'm like,
Yeah,
oh, it's
right.
a sunny day. It's great. Where are you located? Like that is my go-to because it just kind of helps me level set with and connect with you, right? Like,
Yeah.
oh, I was stuck in that hurricane in Florida.
No,
So
so it's funny you mention that because this was one of the more thoughtful things I saw on LinkedIn. I don't know who they posted it, but it was something to the effect of, you know, if you're soliciting people in Florida this week,
don't,
like
yeah,
be
like that
mindful,
doesn't make
right?
any
Like
sense.
you know, relax, right? And there's lots of like little ways to show up and be authentic. So bring it back to the question about LinkedIn. So you know, look, I've just showed up exactly who I am. I like to talk about the things that I'm interested in, which is usually the specific items I'm working on in the business. So you're going to see a lot about Cheema. You're going to see a lot about how I'm thinking about designing sales and marketing and customer service. For me to do my job well, I think I need to know about the industry. So I really try to understand the financial sort of operations of most large, you know, competitors, but the other businesses. How do they solve a very similar problem differently? What are their specific value propositions? So I'll talk about what I'm seeing from an industry perspective, right? I'll share a little bit about my family. And I think when I do that and you do it consistently, people sort of get to know you a little bit. And I think that's really, really powerful. And I think it's really special where uh, if I was buying and I could go look at this person and I could get a sense of who they are, that would be an asset in my buying journey, assuming that you like what I put out there. And if you don't, you're probably not going to like me anyway, and you're probably not going to buy from me, right? So I think you know to think about this for most people in the industry, I think that LinkedIn is a huge opportunity to add something to your sales process. It won't replace it, right? But I think there's something there that you should take advantage of. And for me, the other part of the question was, how has it helped? The thing I don't talk about on LinkedIn, but is really true. I get a ton of inbound leads,
Yeah, because they
right?
want to work with you. I
And
mean,
that's
I
really
don't know if I
that's a
need
great thing to get.
services, but I want whatever you're selling, Lars. Like you're just a good person. Like I I love seeing your Disney pictures or when you even like source the crowd with like, hey, I'm doing this new booth setup. Where do you guys think I should put Cheema or what should I have on the side of this? Like like I mean, you posted that and that was like, gosh, I don't even know how long ago, but I remember that because it's just so authentic and it's just
I love how
like
that stuck out too. Yeah. And you know,
yeah,
like, and so look, like, yeah, sure, there's a little bit more behind the madness of it, where part of that is, you know, I'm informing my network that I'm going to be at that conference.
right. Yeah.
When I was there, I talked to a lot of people who mentioned that post, right? That's cool.
Right? You
Cool,
connected with
right?
these
So,
people now, months later, still talking about it.
yeah. So, like, like, what a great example too, because you never know which piece of content will be, you know, sort of a hook for someone else, whether that's to build a relationship or a friendship, create a business partnership, whatever it is.
Mm-hmm.
But here's what I can tell you after showing up consistently on LinkedIn for 3 years in a way where I wasn't just using it to prospect customers, but really using it as a platform to engage. I have been benefited by getting to know more wonderful people in the industry and getting to meet a lot of new customers.
Right. Right. I kind of have a pet peeve myself with salespeople who don't have a LinkedIn presence because I feel sales is largely relationship based. I've seen salespeople get hired because they have books. And so it's like if you're not building relationships, if you don't have a personal brand, then like I mean, it's so cold. It's so cold because people want to work with people, and like they don't have this connection with you. And then you're calling like, hey, I have a solution. It'll solve all your problems. And then it's like you expect them to embrace that when like you don't have a presence. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, I feel like as a salesperson, you have to be a person. Like you can't just, I don't know if that makes sense, but it's like having a presence online and like being more than just a salesperson at a company, you know, like be a person.
I've heard this term, which I like, but it's never really clearly defined. And it's this idea of like, you want to be for your customer. You want to do things that are for them and favor them, right? I have some customers who don't care about LinkedIn, a lot of them. Okay. And I have some that do. So if I'm going to be for my customer, I'm going to be available on the channels in which they exist. Okay. LinkedIn is a place that a lot of customers will go to find the people they want to buy from. And so for those customers, I should show up. And I saw this great meme a couple of days ago, which you're going to really like. You know, the icon that shows up if you don't put a profile picture. It's just kind of like that silhouette. Yeah, right. And it said, if your head of marketing looks like this, you're going to miss quota. And it was just like the silhouette of like the nobody.
Right.
Like if you're a revenue leader and like you're not taking advantage of that opportunity, I don't think there's any excuse. If you're a buyer, it doesn't matter if you show up there or not. But if you're the person who is selling, if you are in charge of the marketing or the sales process for the organization, you should be on LinkedIn, of course.
Yeah. And like engaging with your company, engaging with your prospects, like building that digital relationship. Because I mean, let's face it, historically, 80s, whatever, we were making sales calls in person. Like, oh, dad's going on a sales trip. He's going to Indiana, Illinois, and Michigan. He'll be back in 3 weeks. And like he was, you know, going around to all these companies and doing sales calls. But we don't do that anymore. Nope. So if you're not doing that, how are you making these connections?
The first sales job I ever had, I was given a phone book and I got the T's. And it was terrible. And then I got the letter T. Oh yeah, no. And so one thing I wanted to see is like before he would give you leads, like you had to cross out like a whole, you know, like the old school big yellow pages, right? So, you know, I'm sitting there getting, you know, just rejected left and right. It was to sell season tickets for a sporting team, right? And so I'm getting rejected all day. And after lunch, I skipped all the way to the Toyota dealerships and made a sale. And I was like, I thought I was like top stuff, like, you know, sale on the first day, right?
Yeah.
And the person with the manager there was so infuriated because I broke the rule, right? That he didn't want you to make a sale. He wanted you to get through all your bad phone calls before you'd get a lead, right? So it wasn't actually about making a sale. I know, bad training. It was all about the process of being told no so many times. And I'm sitting here thinking, listen, I've been told no my whole life. Like, I don't need more training on rejections, right? Like sometimes we lose like we have a good intention with a bad execution, right? So if the thing you're wanting me to do is to learn the you know the script, to understand the objections and to sell, there's a lot of ways to do that. But having a bunch of, you know, college kids, you know, with phone books getting told no all day, as you can imagine, it was a very high churn sort of job. And I was out of there quick. I was like, this is terrible.
Like, I'm done with the tease.
Oh yeah.
I'm out. I know when you hire somebody like a BDR to do the cold calls and stuff, like a requirement is like thick skin. You got to be able to take 50 no's and keep dialing. And that's sometimes really hard for salespeople. I mean, it's such a Debbie Downer. Such a Debbie Downer. So
yeah, I mean,
go ahead.
I was just gonna say there's a lot of false bravado in sales and marketing where, you know, people will say, you know, dumb things like, I love being rejected. Really? No, one more no gets you closer to yes. Sure, but you shouldn't love it. You shouldn't fall in love with the process of no. I think you detach from the rejection as a not as a personal rejection, but you just know that you're doing the work the right way. And as long as I do the work the right way and I've got the right strategy, you know, I'll be okay. I'll figure it out. Sometimes a lot of sales, you know, success is dumb luck, right place, right time. But the harder you work, the luckier you get. So you just got to have a certain like lightness around it, right?
Yeah, for sure. So you had mentioned like telephone books, and we're beyond that. We've got so much technology available to us now. So how does technology fit into the sales process? What tools do you use?
It's interesting. I mean, none of us could do our jobs today without a smartphone and without high-speed internet, right?
Right.
Like, think about it. I mean, I remember I was working for a long time before I got a laptop to take home. You're like, yay, I get to work from home now. You're like, no, it wasn't to work from home. I get to check my emails after hours, right?
Right.
Uh,
Right. More work for me.
yeah, yeah. Congrats. I was stoked at the time. So there's a lot of pieces that we sort of take for granted from a technology standpoint. I think we're always looking for what the secrets are. But if you think about being available as a salesperson is super important.
Yeah.
I'm not saying you need to be tied to checking your phone all day and your emails all day, but salespeople who are responsive and are there for their customers you can find a lot of success just in showing up, right? I'd say from a technology standpoint too, here's what's fantastic. I don't need to go through the phone book anymore. I can find not only the right companies to talk to, because before it was just driving around, and then you would notice maybe a distribution center and say, wow, I come here, my trucks go to the other side of town all the time. I should go talk to them, right? Now all of a sudden I can find the right companies, the right individuals. I can learn about the company. I can learn about the individual. I can probably find their phone number, their cell phone, all within a matter of minutes, right? But then there's other pieces of the technology because, with some of the marketing tools, it's not just PowerPoint, but maybe you're using a Canva for some design. You can use some of these AI tools. You can send better messaging, multimedia messaging in ways that I think are pretty interesting. You can have a Zoom call. It's funny because today that's a day-to-day thing that we do, but a couple of years ago it wasn't. And some people don't know how to use video conferencing well. They haven't thought about how they present, how they show up. So all those are little moments of technology. And I would even say things like, going and recording videos, not for a conference call, right? But an actual recorded video message, like a video explainer. Those kinds of messages are incredibly valuable for buyers because they can watch it whenever they want. And if you're able to do those kinds of messages well, it can be personalized for them, and it can show the value and really get that intrigue up where they watch a 3-4 minute video and they're like, wow, I need to go spend an hour with this person to see if there's something more.
I mean, in full transparency, I had a prospect that I was talking to. I had a salesperson kind of working that relationship, and they had asked for some answers to some questions. And, we created an email with responses to their questions and shot it over. But the person we were up against created a video walking through the proposal and, answered their questions in a visual way. And they're like, because of that, we're going to go work with them because that was innovative. I was like, high five, props to you.
Yeah.
That's good. I happened to be on vacation, so I could not do that in the timeline that they required. But I lost to that, and I'm okay with that because that person set themselves apart. They went above and beyond and they did an amazing job, and I cannot fault them for that. You got to set yourself apart.
Something that I think is nearly a secret in sales. You said you lost, you knew why you lost, right? You had clarity and you said, and I'm okay with that because you're able to learn and get better from that process.
Yeah.
How many salespeople lose opportunities and they have no reason why they specifically?
Oh my gosh.
And just say, oh, we were too expensive, or they weren't making changes. Oh, I know. You're so lame. Stop it.
Yeah, and I think it's so important to
expensive compared to what?
Yeah. Or who did you lose to? Sometimes you can know who you lost to, or, and you should document that because that helps you understand your positioning, why you lost.
Is provider ABC still doing a great job for you? If they're not, here are some things that we've worked on over the last few weeks, months, quarters that were different from when we last talked and might be valuable for you today, right?
And that's that capturing information to have more intelligent personalization. So it's not just knowing where they went to college, but it's knowing what provider they currently use.
It's knowing what their favorite college bar is.
Knowing what their what?
Their favorite college bar was. Kidding. So I got it once, and it was the name of a very popular ASU college bar. no personalization, and then there's their email. I forwarded it to a few people because I thought it was a terrible example of outreach. The person then sends a personalized email after, and they said, I wanted to reach back out to you. I saw your email was forwarded 7 times, so I'm assuming that this was an interesting message. And I said, interesting, but not in the way you think.
Interesting as we all had a good laugh because that was very
we're laughing at you, not with you.
Oh my gosh, that's so bad. All right. So for sales teams struggling with too much complexity, where should they start to streamline and refocus?
You know, it would really depend on where they've created the complexity and what doesn't work in their process. Here are some of the major areas that I think teams do get bogged down. They're probably a larger team with a lack of clarity or defensive regional ownership, right? Where they're not doing the thing that's best for the customer, but they have, in an effort to be fair, divided geographies or customer opportunities in ways that don't make sense and aren't in line with the best for the customer or for their business. Sure. They probably have a CRM process that is capturing a lot of data, but not a lot of useful data. And with that, they typically get a low compliance, meaning they have a lot of KPIs that are just vanity. They don't really have a actionable, reasonable sales forecast for what's in their business. The goal should be a pipeline that matters and KPIs that matter. Right. Typically what happens is you get an amalgamation of like, I need to see this report and I need to see this data. And all of a sudden, based on people asking for things that aren't thoughtful, right? You'll get these sales reports of too much information, none of it useful. And it's things that take a lot of time from the individual IC sellers and from the sales leadership to compile it together just to look good. And if you were to boil all that down and say, what information do we need and what moves the needle and what matters, you should be able to have a very quick weekly sales meeting, monthly sales meeting. You should have a very quick synopsis of your dashboards, and you should at a glance know whether or not you were winning and losing that day, that week, that month, that quarter, and then what's in the pipeline that's worth talking about.
Right. No, I think that's great. I also think that leveraging some of the technology tools with like HubSpot, for example, has like integrations with like Otter or Zoom, where you can record those sales calls that will create those notes in HubSpot for you. Because we were talking about data and like knowing the DQ reason and things like that. I think we need to capture more data in HubSpot. Like I know we're talking about like meaningless data, and I don't mean it like that, but it's like understanding what their pain points are. So if you have a conversation with somebody and you identify what their pain points are, that should live within the system in some sort of way that you can report it and capture it and say, hey, these are the fleets that are having this problem. So we need to solve for that problem or communicate how we solve for that problem, or then becomes your marketing message, how you solve for that problem. But today, one of my pain points is that we're not capturing data. So, I mean, I think, sales capturing that data can make the marketing more sophisticated, but I also I feel like a lot of the conversations between marketing and sales is that marketing wants sales to do more than maybe what they can do, in the sense that like, I have to make all these sales calls, I have to make all these appointments, I have to close these contracts, I have to do this. And then you want me to have all these data points, and I don't know, maybe the teams need to be bigger, but at the same time, these smaller sales teams have so many, they have so many things and competing priorities for what needs to be captured or done. What would you say is maybe like the top 3 most important things for a salesperson to do or to focus on?
That's an interesting way of framing it. So what are the most important things to do? The easiest way to think about it would be revenue generating activities. And that could be with current or prospective customers, right? Because I think the problem is the best salespeople, they're working on ensuring they have a great product, right? So then they spend a lot of time focusing on making sure that their product is worth selling. That's a good thing to do, but it's not the right way to use your sales bandwidth and resources. They should be capturing information so that the company has visibility, right? But you have to really hold the line to make sure that it's not duplicative work or vanity work for executives who don't know what the heck they're doing. They just want to see it, because if they can't see it, they feel like they can't control it. Problem is, some folks are asking for the wrong things. So I think it's revenue generating activity. It's doing that with current customers and new customers. You ask for three things, and I always like doing like kind of the 1, 2, 3 bullet point. But the truth is, like, all right, so you've got a great pipeline. You know who you're reaching out to. You know why you're reaching out to it. You're disqualifying those who aren't there, and you're always adding to the top of that funnel. Great. And then with the customers that you're working with, you own this version of the strategic relationship that's rock solid. You know who they are. You know what they need. You ensure that they're getting the a customer success experience that matters. Yeah. And you're working with them to find more opportunity. Why? Because if they like you and you like them, you should do more together, right? And then the rest of it is communicating to the organization in a way that makes sense, where you don't bog your people down with fluff, but you still have everything you need at the right level.
Yeah, I agree with that. Do you see any like trends or shifts in sales process, like any changes, anything this year that has happened or in coming years that is going to change kind of the sales approach?
So in coming years, all right, everybody keeps talking about AI. Nobody really understands what AI is and how it works. I've been learning a little bit because I'm super excited by it, but I don't want to pretend to be like an armchair expert at some of the things that AI might be capable of. But here's what I would say. It seems like with larger data sets and generative outputs, we could have better automation around prospecting, not just at the company level, but around the individuals we should reach out to. We will probably have the ability to design and follow up with sequences far better than we do today. And we already have really good tools around that, right?
Yeah.
But it'd be fair to think that AI will take that up a notch. Okay, so we know who to reach out to. We know how to reach out to them. We might even have like a perfect email, right? Like we might have like the 100% lavender score and Grammarly, but also something that was created and personalized, like et cetera, et cetera. Do we have that next week? No. Do we have it next year or 5 years or 10 years from now? I don't know, maybe. But some of these tools that automate parts of the sales process and prospecting process will get significantly better.
Yeah.
So as a trend, what I do think becomes more important as a seller is to be an expert in what you are selling, an expert in your industry, and be the kind of person that can build relationships with a wide range of people. And hopefully be the kind of person where it's like, listen, if my AI agent is sending messages to a procurement AI agent, and like both of our AIs have decided that our company should meet,
right?
For some period of time, they're still going to hopefully be a person and a person doing business. And so weirdly enough, I think there's going to be less sales jobs, or at least less, BS within like the sales profession. And there's going to be more value and prioritization placed on folks who can do the old school sale things that we like really well. That means representing a brand well, networking, going to conferences, jumping on a call, problem solving, figuring things out, and giving the best of your organization to your customers, right? Yep. So maybe it's not a trend yet, but I think as you think about what does the sales flow look like in 10 or 15 years, I think it's going to be people who are exceptionally good at that, right?
Yeah,
those people, but you have to be exceptionally good at that.
Yeah, you have to have your own personal brand. You have to know your solution. You have to know the industry. You have to be, I think you have to be able to be the face of the company. You showing up on the calls and stuff like that. You have to be very comfortable talking.
Brands can feel very impersonal, right? Because, the brand doesn't speak, right? The brand doesn't have anything other than a product to offer. And that product is still made up of the individuals behind it. So I think brands are looking for champions and spokespeople who can carry the torch. And, there's going to be, hopefully, at the best organization, several folks who do that. And I think the value of those folks becomes more and more important, especially for smaller organizations that serve larger organizations. Because those larger organizations are made up of buying committees where it's like, well, hey, here's the 10 people who are going to make this decision. And they all have seen how, a Jen shows up and presents the business.
Yeah. Yeah. So you shared a lot, like tremendous amount of insight and advice, but I'm still going to ask for some secret sauce. So I just like, if you have any tips, something that one of the listeners listening to this could be like, you know what, that's a really great idea, or like a tidbit, some insight tip, anything like that to just help them make them more successful.
I thought about giving like a bad tip. Call me out on it. Send blind meeting requests to someone you've never talked to for a half hour the next day and see if they accept.
Wait, is this a bad tip?
Yeah, it's a bad tip. Absolutely.
Okay, right. Oh, hold on. Okay.
Because it's worked for me, but it's a bad tip.
Lars, that is how I met you. I reached out to you on LinkedIn. I did not know you, and I was like, hey, can we just do like a 15-minute coffee chat?
That's different. I'm saying like straight up cold email someone.
For like prospecting?
No context. 30-minute meeting the next day. It's not even that bad.
Maybe don't do that one.
Yeah, there's better ways to try and get that initial meeting. Here's something that I have been working on myself. I think is a really, really helpful trick, but you've got to be comfortable with selling yourself and the personal brand side of it. So on LinkedIn, it's easiest to do this with your phone, but send a video message. I've gotten a few, and what I can tell you is I've watched every single one of the ones that I've received, but I've been sending a lot more. And the response rate on you sending a video to an individual is absolutely wild. There's probably not a better way to reach out for an initial cold outreach. Why?
That on LinkedIn, like in a LinkedIn message?
Yeah, in a LinkedIn message, just straight up like a video message DM. So if I was, going to send a message to you, and let's say we hadn't met before, right? I could say, hey, Jen, we just connected. Thanks so much for adding a random stranger on LinkedIn. My name's Lars, and I do X, Y, and Z. I think I would support you well because of, these value props that I've already thought through. And it would be fun to talk about it more. Wanted to send you a video because I thought it was a little bit more personal. Would you be up for chatting?
Yeah.
Try it.
I've not heard of that. Like that one is like throwing me for a loop right now. Like I've heard of the video messages, but not through LinkedIn.
So here's the thing. The idea of the sample message I just gave you, it takes a minute to record. Right? So it's not hard, but you have to be comfortable to present yourself that way.
Yeah.
That's tricky. That's
a lot easier said than done because I've done it. And it's like you're looking at your angle.
You're going to watch the video probably more than the person who receives it because they're going to watch it once and you're going to watch it like 10 times the first couple times you do it. And then you're going to re-record it and you're going to say, wait a minute, I fumbled on that word. But as long as you're okay just speaking very conversationally, it's okay. Yeah.
So last time we talked, you recommended some books. So I'm going to put you on the spot to actually share some of those books because I thought it was like, they were really helpful. I think one was maybe like Fanatical Sales.
Fanatical Prospecting.
Yeah. Okay. So that's one. Was there another sales book that you recommend?
The Challenger Sales Method. Those would be the two books I most recommend. So Fanatical Prospecting is going to tell you that you need to prospect better. And if you read it and you absorb that message, you know it's 100% true. And that prospecting is the lifeblood of your business. Full stop. When you stop prospecting, you stop the opportunities coming.
Always be selling.
Yep.
Always.
And then the Challenger Sales Method might not work for everyone. And I don't know, like I would take that back. There's something for everyone to learn from the Challenger Sales Method, but there's a lot of great research that is behind the book. And the big idea there is if you can come alongside your customers and maybe challenge elements of how the business is done, present novel solutions, you can stand out among the crowd. So many folks are trying to take what a customer has and then fit an imperfect solution around that because of what you offer. And instead, The idea is have an incredible product, do something really, really well. And then when customers reach out, put them more into your sort of mousetrap than you try to put, yourself into theirs. That's a problematically like oversimplified way of framing it. But truly, it's a great way of thinking through presenting things differently. Most salespeople want to be highly agreeable and figure out a way to say yes to business that might not work. The challenger sales method would encourage you to become an expert in your field and create value for your customers in presenting different ways to solve their problems. And if you can do that, you can create daylight between you and your competition.
Yeah, I love the challenger model because it helps you kind of level set with, I understand your pain, and we've helped other companies get through this as well. And so like using that emotional rationale, and then like later you present yourself as a solution. I hate when I see a deck that says we are, and then it just starts talking about themselves. And I'm like, well, how are you going to talk about yourself and how you solve problems when you don't even know my problems? Like you haven't communicated that you understand the problems that I'm experiencing. You're just saying we do these things. And I'm like, that's great, but I don't have that problem. I don't know. But well, this has been officially like the longest podcast that I've done. But it was a really great conversation. So thank you so much for jumping on and sharing so much insight with us. I really appreciate it.
This was a super fun conversation, and I'm glad that we get to be number one for longest conversation. At some point, I'll be dethroned, and let me know when that happens because I'll have to tune into that episode.
You'll have to jump back on and be like, no.
Part two. All right, we'll have our follow-up as soon as that happens.
Well, thank you so much.
Awesome. Thanks.